hear the old adage, the customer is always right? Yeah, well, that's not the way it works here in the U.S. anymore. Take the case of Duke Energy, North Carolina's leading utility company. They just screwed up massively, and now they're looking to make their customers pay for it. Recently, it was discovered that more than 80,000 tons of gray coal ash sludge was leaking for days out of one of their ash storage ponds through a hole in a drainage pipe beneath the pond, right into the Dan River, which people use for drinking water. According to the Associated Press, coal ash is known to contain a witch's brew of toxic chemicals, including lead, arsenic, mercury, and radioactive uranium. Coal ash ponds are basically goopy sludge pits, where all the ash gets dumped after all that coal is burned to power your iPhones. More modern utilities line those pits so the goop doesn't seep into the groundwater, but Duke's pits aren't lined at all. So it's a mess. And now the governor of North Carolina is calling for Duke to haul all their coal ash away from rivers and lakes to help prevent this from ever happening again. And in response, Duke's CEO, Lynn Good, said, listen, they've taken responsibility for the spill and the cleanup of the Dan River. But then she goes on to say, because the ash was created over decades for the generation of electricity, we do believe that ash pond disposal costs are ultimately a part of our cost structure. And that's just fancy talk for saying, we'll pay for the giant spill that just happened, but the customers are going to pay for moving all the rest of our sludge. With over 30 ash ponds, the cost of moving the goop is likely to run into the hundreds of millions of dollars. And Duke's customers are probably the ones that are going to have to pay for it. Many folks aren't happy about that, including the State Attorney General Roy Cooper, who said he'll fight for consumers if Duke tries to charge them. As one lawyer involved in lawsuits over the mess puts it, Duke has profited from doing the cheapest thing for decades, and it's now time for them to pay the bill. Which is tough talk, but it's probably not going to happen. Let's be real here. When corporations screw up in the U.S., they're not the ones that end up paying for it. Their customers do. Which is why in the U.S., the customer isn't always right. The customer is always broke. Tonight, let's talk about that by following me on Twitter @TheResident.